Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage the President and CEO of the Greater Houston Partnership, Bob Harvey.
All right. Well, again, feel free to keep eating. I hope you enjoyed your lunch up to this point. Now, shortly, I will invite UpSkill Houston's Executive Committee Chair, Dan Gilbane, to the stage, along with Beth Cobert, who's the CEO of the Markle Foundation's nonprofit Skillful initiative. And they will advance our discussion about how to create opportunity for all in an increasingly digital economy. So a few words about Beth. Meaningful discussions like this are necessary in large forums such as this, and maybe even larger, but also on a smaller scale, talking to companies, talking to community organizations, talking to education leaders. We know that the landscape of our economy is changing. We know that the tools we use on the job are changing. Therefore, we know that the skills we need, the skills that our future workforce is going to need, are changing also. The Skillful initiative was launched in Colorado in 2016, and it creates a skills-based labor market that empowers all Americans to succeed in the digital economy through strong and strategic partners, including Microsoft, LinkedIn, and other partners. And I'm going to stop there for a minute. This idea of skill-based labor markets is just it's a powerful concept that fits well with what we're doing, but listen to the subtleties as to how that model differs from our more traditional model of how we assess talent in the past. Beth brings deep experience in talent management and partnership development. Before joining Skillful, Beth served as the acting director of the U.S. Office of Personnel Management under President Obama. And during her tenure, she championed recruiting, development, and advancement practices to support a talented and diverse federal workforce at a time of very rapid technological advancement. In her previous work as Deputy Director for Management and U.S. Chief Performance Officer for the Office of Management and Budget, she led efforts to make government more effective and efficient in order to deliver faster, better, and smarter services to citizens and businesses. Now, Beth worked for nearly 30 years at McKinsey & Company as a senior partner in the New York and San Francisco offices before joining the federal government. She's a member of the board of directors of CBRE Group Incorporated and the Princeton University Board of Trustees. She also served as a board member and board chair of United Way of the Bay Area, and as a member of the Stanford Graduate School of Business Advisory Council. She received a bachelor's degree in economics with high honors from Princeton and an MBA from Stanford University with honors. She and her husband have 2 children and currently reside in Denver, Colorado. So please join me in welcoming Dan Gilbane and Beth Cobert to the stage.
All right. Thank you, Bob. I am very excited about this discussion. We had a briefing call about a week ago, and Beth and I probably could talk all day. So I think I'm just going to jump right into it and see what we can learn about what you guys have done at Markle and Skillful. Tell us a little bit about why and how Markle decided to create Skillful. What were the forces emerging, present, future, that you recognized that needed to be addressed?
So the Markle Foundation has focused really on the intersection of society and technology and the challenges and opportunities that creates. And has a pretty unique operating model in terms of tackling an issue, figuring out how to catalyze a broader change, and then moving on. So it did a lot of work around national security and 9/11. It did a lot of work around electronic health records and trying to make that the way we all operate. And starting, 2012, 2013, really started to think about how much the economy was changing with the advent of digitization, artificial intelligence, automation, and recognized that the way we think about training workers, hiring workers, managing talent really hadn't changed since the Industrial Revolution, and how could we make that change happen? And the other focus that Markle often brings is to say, how do we drive change at a very practical level on the ground? And so if we thought about how to make this transformation happen, Markle was looking for a place to make that happen, and we got engaged in Colorado with strong encouragement from then Governor Hickenlooper. It was a place like Houston, as you described, that was actually in the midst of a pretty strong recovery. Employers were struggling to find talent. And it was a place that was willing to bring partners together to look ahead. And so that's how we got started. We were really excited when Microsoft Philanthropies stepped in to join us on that journey, not just with their financial support, but with real expertise about how technology is transforming the economy. And so that's how we got started in Colorado.
And so tell us about the tactics that you've used to address the issues, both from a worker perspective as well as an employer perspective.
Well, like all good startups, we've been through a few iterations of our business model since we started. That, I think, comes with the territory. You sort of have to say we're on version 2.0 of our business model, so that's where we are. And as we thought about this work, we thought about a number of things, and having heard and observed the great work you're doing, some of these I think will be really familiar to you. So we said, if we're going to tackle this problem of creating an opportunity to access the American dream for everyone in this digital age, we have to do a number of things. We have to work in partnerships. So we have partnerships with all sorts of folks across the state of Colorado, with our workforce systems, with our education partners, with employers and employer associations from across the state. So it's about partnership. It's about using technology to help address the problems and create new solutions, because technology is driving so much of the change. We as a group decided to focus on adults, so sort of post-secondary, because those are the people whose jobs are changing today. Really important to focus on K-12. We've got some partners in Colorado, including CareerWise, which is a great apprenticeship program, that are working on that place. So we decided we would think about adult workers who typically have completed high school but don't have a full bachelor's degree. That's about 70% of the workforce, so we thought we'd be really focused by picking that 70% and doing it in partnership. So we've got programs where we work directly through employer associations and the workforce groups and local chambers to change employer behavior. We've spent a bunch of time investing resources with career coaches based in community organizations or the workforce centers or local community colleges to help workers. We saw real leverage in how a coach can help a person get on a great trajectory. And we also do a lot of work with our partners in the post-secondary system in helping them build the connections to make their educations focused not just on the skills of today, but the skills of the future, and doing it in a way that works for adult learners and that works for employers who are looking to find new talent in their communities.
And it sounds like you guys have had a lot of success. Tell us a couple of the success stories that you'd like to highlight for us today.
So let me describe success from a couple dimensions, because we work with lots of different folks. From an employer perspective, one of our great partners is a company called AquaHot, based up north near Fort Collins. For those of you who know Denver, drive north on 25, get stuck in a little traffic on the way, you'll get to Fort Collins. AquaHot is a company that makes heating systems for water in your overpriced large RV. Complicated things, and they had been looking for talent, and they kept looking for mechanical engineers. That was the requirement in their job description, a degree in mechanical engineering. And they were not getting talent. So we did some work with them and said, okay, what are the skills you need for this job? And it turns out what you really needed was to understand hydraulics. That was sort of one of the core skills. Well, if you're a diesel mechanic, you actually understand hydraulics at a working level in a way that enables you to be a great candidate. And so they changed the way they think about hiring. They changed the way they think about managing talent. They do not have the trouble they had before filling those positions. They've got great people in that organization who are now on a better career pathway. So that's an employer. Another great example from our coaching work, Judy is a coach at the Community College of Denver who's really been working with the students there to help them think more broadly about the skills they're acquiring. And so she got one of her machining students interested in applying for a job with a company that does 3D printing, and got the employer to also think about, hey, wait a minute, these are skills that are relevant. So we now got a worker who's able to think about a new pathway. So that's another person we've helped. So we try and think about how we can create success stories for employers, for individuals, and the many organizations that support them.
So shifting gears, but continuing with success, you guys have unbelievable partnerships, whether it's Microsoft, LinkedIn, multiple states. Tell us a little bit about how those came together and the benefits of partnering that way.
So I've long been a believer that, when there's lots of organizations that talk about partnering, but you actually have to live the values and not just talk about it. It means you've got to be willing to share the credit. It means you really got to be willing to let somebody else lead in other places. And that's been a hallmark of our work and Markle's tradition. So our work with Microsoft, as I said, is not just financial support, but their expertise. One of our initiatives is a community of practice among career coaches from across the state in Colorado and about to launch in Indiana. And we've put that up on Microsoft Teams as a platform because it was a way to get the interaction that we wanted. We've had a terrific partnership with the state of Colorado and now with the state of Indiana, where we've really seen the leadership from the governor as a core factor in driving our success, both Governor Hickenlooper, now Governor Polis, and Governor Holcomb, really using the bully pulpit of their leadership role to say, this matters, we've got to come together. And in each of those cases, think about what are the initiatives the states could make. We partner on the ground with local organizations. I know in the remarks earlier, you talked about partnering with folks in the community as you were creating UpSkill Houston. We've learned the same lesson. We started Skillful as a more sort of direct-to-consumer model and realized that while working adults who might have interest in upskilling might be everywhere, they didn't know us. And it would take a lot of resources to get them to find us. But they do know their local United Way. They do know Mi Casa. They do know the Mount Carmel Veterans Center in Colorado Springs. And so how could we partner with those folks? And so it's bringing these people together around this goal of a skills-based labor market and adapting and integrating and adjusting as we go to make those partners work.
Great. Any other lessons learned as it relates to partnerships that you'd highlight for this group?
So it is about everyone. I think you've heard that. I think the other piece is being deliberate and clear about the roles and expectations you have. And again, it's been, we just, after our work in Colorado, we just entered Indiana in 2018. And we really, I think, it's always good to get the do-over, right? So we could go to Indiana and take all those lessons learned from Colorado and make different mistakes, just not the same mistakes. So we've learned, for example, the workforce system in Colorado has been a great partner. We were more explicit as we entered Indiana to think about how were we going to structure those things so that it would work within the constraints that the workforce system faces about their sources of funding and how they do work. The other partnership, which I forgot to mention, is the Skillful State Network. As we worked with these states, we got a lot of incoming of people who were interested. And so we created this forum of now 26 states whose leadership are really interested from learning from each other. So I think the other part and coming together and saying, how can they get traction around this issue of creating opportunity, particularly for working adults, particularly for folks who don't have college degrees and are going to be probably more threatened in today's economy. It's a bipartisan, eclectic mix of states across the nation. And I think the piece that you learn from that lesson to me from that partnership is you can learn from lots of folks. This is not just about Skillful imparting our tools, but us listening and learning and making those collaborations happen.
So technology, particularly automation and artificial intelligence, is having a huge impact on the current workforce, but also even more so perhaps on the future of our workforce. So let us know your thoughts there.
So I'm old enough to have remembered the days before email and cell phones. You might have picked that up from Bob's commenting about how long I've been doing what I'm doing. And I think we believe, and I imagine most of you do too, that technology is going to change how we do every job in America. Some jobs may disappear, new ones will be created. We are optimists about that. But there is no doubt in my mind that every job will be different and will involve technology in some way, right? You can think about folks, a home health care aide who today, right, probably does reporting on his or her duties to their agency with an iPad or their phone, right? You walk into a restaurant and like there's a tablet at the stand where you come in, it checks you in, sometimes it checks you out. So it is changing every job, and unless we think proactively both about how we're going to equip people to make that transition. There are many skills people have that are relevant, and their insights will remain, but unless we can help them, and they help themselves, by the way, they do believe they need to do that too, get access to those new skills, we're going to leave them behind, and that would be both a terrible waste of their personal talents and frankly a terrible disservice to the companies who have helped them build those skills.
Agreed. So thinking about workforce, tell me your thoughts as it relates to a skills-based labor market versus a degree-based labor market.
So as we thought about this, we've tried to focus on this framing of a skills-based labor market, right? What is it a person can do today or can learn to do in the future? Those are skills. Those are the things, the attributes that you have or can learn, and you could have learned them in many different ways. You could have learned them through education, lots of valuable skills through formal education. You could have learned them in the military, lots of investment in training in the military and hands-on experience. You could have learned those skills in things you do outside the work context, whether because you like to tinker with your car or because you organize events for your community group and get really good at project management. So there's lots of ways someone can have acquired skills. And if you really ask an employer what they want the person with those skills. We focus on skills as opposed to credentials and degrees because we think people often use degrees in particular as proxies for skills. And they're not very accurate, and they also tend to actually cut people out and filter people out as opposed to filtering people in, right? We know that, I believe, access to education and opportunity hasn't been equal for many people. And so you're exacerbating challenges if you only focus on degrees. Lots of statistics, I won't get this one precisely right, but if you think about an executive assistant position, something less than 30% of executive assistants have a bachelor's degree, and over 70% of job postings for executive assistants require a bachelor's degree. Now, I think what you're looking for is someone who's got writing skills and reading and organization skills, and you can learn some of those things in education, but it's not really the proxy. So we focus on skills. We think credentials can be a helpful way to designate your skills, particularly when you get them in modular or more lifetime chunks. And so skills-based means you focus on skills, but at least I would argue, I think we would argue that also means there's going to be more education and continuous education over your lifetime, and that the role of education in this changing economy becomes even more important, but as a means to the end and not as the only measure of whether somebody's got what it takes to be successful.
I think that makes a lot of sense from an educational perspective. From an employer perspective, how would you think about moving more towards a skilled-based labor market?
So there's a couple things that you can do. And one of the things we've tried to do at Skillful and in the Rework America Business Network, which is another core initiative of the Markle Foundation aimed more at national employers, is to try and get really tangible about what you can do next. Despite being a consultant, I'm all about execution and driving things forward. So we said, okay, what's the barrier? So one of the things we heard is, and I know from when I was in Washington and leading the Office of Personnel Management, you'd go to talk to everybody who would sort of say something along the lines of, we can't hire the people we need because OPM/HR tells us we can't, right? And for those of you who are employers, you know that the right way to hire people is a partnership between the hiring manager, who knows what he or she wants for that job, and HR, who helps them source them, right? It's got to work together or it falls apart. So what we said is, okay, how do we start that process? How do you, for example, look at a job description and say, what are really the skills I need, right? Go back to our Aqua Hat friends, right? They were using mechanical engineer as a proxy for understanding hydraulics. So one of the things you can do is look at your job descriptions and say, do you need that requirement? 2, what are the skills that are required? Both technical skills and foundational skills. We've actually built a little tool, the Skillful job posting generator, that can help you do that. You go online, you pull in a role, it pulls data from ONET, for those of you who know those kinds of systems and elsewhere. And then you just sort on, these are the ones that are required, these are the ones that are preferred, technical, professional, and at the end, you have a skills-based job posting that you can use, and that's a great place to get started.
That's a very logical technique. From a challenge perspective, what have you seen the challenges from an employer trying to move more towards a skills-based perspective?
There's a bunch of things. It sounds simple. This is like many things. It sounds simple, and it's so much harder. So for the employer, who's like gone through the process of rewriting a job description, right? Raise your hand if you really enjoyed that process. Right, it's a lot of work, and if you're in HR, the hiring manager is like, where is that? I need that person yesterday. And if you're the hiring manager, it's stuck somewhere in HR, right? That's one of the two. Never. So it takes some work. That's why we focused on these tools. It is hard to think about, actually. You know, you have to take some time, not too much time, actually, but a little bit of time to sort of think about what's different. There's some bias around how people think about what degree attainment represents, and there isn't a good way of articulating the person who is 117 out of 120 required credits through, right? They've done 90, +% of what's required, but it doesn't count, right? So how do you do that well? There's some challenges that we're starting to make progress on in assessing someone's skills, right? So, what are the tools you can use to do that? We actually make all of our hires at every level go through skills assessment. We just hired a senior person for a policy role, and in the last round of the interviews, we had this individual present to us how she would approach a meeting with a governor to talk about these things, because we wanted to see her skills in communication and policy analysis. We did this with our communications person. We had 2 great candidates for a communications slot, and we gave them a skills assessment exercise. And the quarter it was timed, because we're a startup. We do a lot fast. We had 2 great candidates, and arguably candidate A had the stronger resume, but candidate B could produce great content under time pressure, and candidate A did not work that way. And the skill we needed was high quality content under time pressure. So thinking about how you can come up with assessments, it's hard to do that, and if you're a large company, you've got a lot of applicants, finding a way to sift through that can be hard. And changing mindsets of workers about what's really relevant, about employers, of educators, and re-articulating what they're teaching in a language of skills, you gotta work through it.
I know career coaches are another tool that you guys have advocated for. Tell us a little bit about the influence that they can have.
Sure. So let me start by defining what we mean by a career coach, because it can cover a range of things. There's We saw in our initial work when we were getting started that for an individual to go from where they are to make the decision to apply for a job that offered more opportunity, to make the investment of their time and scarce dollars into education, that is a big leap, right? That's a big decision. It's hard to do. And we saw in working with individuals the difference that someone can make in shifting that decision. And I'm sure for everyone in this room, there's somebody who helped shape your path that got you to your seat at lunch today. There are people doing these roles today, particularly to help folks move the ball forward. Many of them work in the workforce system. Others, as I said, work in community organizations, Goodwill, United Way. I don't know the names of all the ones in Houston that don't exist in Denver, but you guys know who they are. The career counselors at a community college. And so what we've done is trying to think about how to do this well and at scale, is these individuals are there. They've got relationships. Folks come to them seeking encouragement, advice, and guidance. How do we make them better at their job? That's the core. How do we get them better information about the job opportunities that exist today, and importantly, the job opportunities that will exist as the economy changes? How do we give them the skills to be more effective at relating to those individuals and helping that individual have the courage and conviction to take the next step? How do we help them access the support services you need? Because if you're a working adult and you want to try and get some education, you got to solve all sorts of problems like transportation and funding and childcare and what to do when your car breaks down in the middle of a semester, when you're almost done with that class but can't figure out how to get to school the next week, right? And so we've seen the power of these folks, and that's why we made a big investment with them. We've got a program called the Skillful Governor's Coaching Corps. I just was at the graduation for the second cohort in Colorado on Friday. We've launched it in Indiana, and it's amazing to hear how these individuals transform lives, and we view our role as making them more successful in doing that. There's an intensive program called the Core. There's this community of practice, which is a way to link folks virtually across the state and get them access to resources that we worked with Microsoft to create that platform. And we think that there's huge underlooked, underappreciated opportunity for that group as a leverage. Guidance counselors, career counselors, whatever you call them, but a big opportunity.
So I've heard you reference Skillful as a startup a couple times. Tell us about the growth of Skillful, first in Colorado and then expanding into Indiana, the Skillful State Network. Tell us about how it's all come together.
So we're a scrappy startup. We have all the right startup attributes. We have the team in one big room with long desks, no barriers between them. We have people much younger than I who have their headphones in while they're busy working every day. We have a little bit of the chaos that comes with startup land. But we started in Colorado, really by leveraging our partners. That's how we've built our reach. And the folks in the state were big partners in that, LinkedIn, community organizations, employers in Colorado. And as we started working, we said, okay, we got to see how we've thought about scale from the beginning, right? So we've tried to think about, as we build tools for employers or coaches, how do we get them so they can scale? So we did a lot of work with employers. We were doing it sort of consulting model one-on-one. We said, that's great, but not going to get there fast enough. We built a training series. We got it SHRM certified so that you can now get HR folks to show up at it. We built this posting generator tool, and we were looking for a second state that we thought was receptive. We were incredibly excited about going to Indiana, where they too have had the benefit of a strong economy and not enough of a skilled workforce to take those challenges on, and just a phenomenal set of organizations in the state focused on these issues. From Ivy Tech, they have a statewide community college system, so actually when you work with them, it's a little bit easier. And some leaders there, Purdue and the Purdue Extension System, who have been partners of ours, the Lumina Foundation, Walmart, as we went in. And then for the governors in the state network, Zoe Baird, who leads the Markle Foundation, and Governor Hickenlooper were actually in Rhode Island. The National Governors Association met there 2 summers ago. And we kept getting people who would call up and say, can you come spend a day, tell us about Skillful? And we're excited about doing that, but like one at a time was not going to get us forward. And so we invited some states to join us, and I thought we'd get 8. That was like, that would be success. We got 20 for the first year. I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? We now have 26. But there's a real hunger to take this issue on, and so I think we've been pulled by that market demand. And that helps us grow and keeps the team feeling stretched. That's a good attribute of a startup. You feel stretched every day.
That's great. So we've talked about the workforce adapting. Tell us a little bit about how Skillful itself has had to adapt as you're dealing with its various constituencies.
It's been an interesting adaptation, right? Our Colorado team went from sort of one group of people in this one space to thinking about, we've got part of our team based in New York where the Markle Foundation's based. We added a team in Indiana, a fantastic leader there who actually was the head of learning and development at Allison Transmissions. His name is Bill Turner. Bob talked about being employer-led as a core attribute of UpSkill Houston, and we would foot stomp that one, by the way. You can't connect someone to a great opportunity unless someone is willing to give them a job, give them a chance to step up in their role. And so we are very much about employers being at the core. So we had Bill, and we've tried to adapt to what's different there, right? So we now have a team. We are running Skillful Governors Coaching Corps in 2 states at the same time, right? That feels very different. How do you stretch your team to do that? How do you, as you grow geographically, keep the parts that are very tangible and specific to your local geography, but not lose the ability to leverage those learnings as you go to a new place? Indiana and Colorado, they're not all the same. Little bit different in terms of industry context. So how do you think about what you can transfer and how you do that well? And how do you think about what needs to adapt because that's what the local market needs?
So as we're thinking about our strategic journey at UpSkill, we've got 5 years behind us. Our next 5 years, we've tremendous partners, many of them in the room, and thank you again to our sponsors. BCG's working with us. Tell us a little bit about how you would frame that for us for the journey going forward for UpSkill.
So I'd start by saying one of the reasons I was so excited to come and join you is I love the way that UpSkill is approaching this challenge, right? It's approaching it with a view of you have to change the whole system, employers changing on their own, educators changing on their own, community organizations changing on their own are not going to have impact. So I think that core is really valuable. And I think the way you have brought people together to say, what can we do? There was a comment in the video of someone who was saying, you know, we're trying not to make it so that every company doesn't have to forge the relationship with the schools on their own. I think that is a great model, right? At one level, if you're an employer, you're competing with each other for talent, but not really, right? The odds of person A and person B you're both competing for them, like 0. Right? And by the way, you know, this is a challenge of growing the pie. So I think those elements are really helpful. I think the things I would look to build on the great stuff you've done is one about how you think about using technology to help you as you move the ball forward, right? What are the common threads that cut across things where technology can help? One example, the Rework America Business Network, which is a Markle initiative of 11 large employers, Microsoft, Walmart, Boeing, Duke Energy, Kaiser, Stanley Black & Decker, Zurich North America, and others whose name I am forgetting, so my apologies.
AT&T?
AT&T is not in that group yet.
Okay.
But they do great stuff on skilling, but they're not in that group.
Okay.
They've come together and are really working on this issue of what does digital literacy mean for the 21st century? And if they can come up with a common definition, how can that help move others forward? So I think finding some common threads. There are jobs, frankly, that every company in Houston probably has, right? Everybody has someone doing customer service, kind of. Everybody has somebody in some of the business support functions. So what are some places where you can find commonality and use technology to help you? But I think this collaboration and iterative process that you've been through is really a great stepping off point for the next phase of your journey.
I would agree 100%. As I said, I think we could chat all day. I think we're out of time, unfortunately. But look forward to continuing this dialogue in our breakout sessions this afternoon, and really appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much.
Delighted to be here, and thank you all.
All right. On to our next part of the agenda. We're going to recognize some key partners. And for me, this is really gratifying. Both of the organizations and the individuals that we're going to recognize today are great organizations who our company and personally I consider friends. Building partnerships to affect change has been a theme running throughout the day. I'd like to recognize these two efforts that demonstrate the power of this collaboration, beginning with the United Way. Since 2008, the United Way of Greater Houston's Thrive Collaborative has helped hardworking but lower-income families achieve their dreams of lasting financial independence, safe and affordable housing, and success for their children. Thrive leverages more than 20 nonprofit partners and partnerships with employers, community colleges, financial institutions, and public sector entities to provide client-focused and bundled services around workforce development and financial coaching to help families increase their incomes and reduce expenses. In its first decade alone, Thrive helped more than 211,000 families and generated more than $1.1 billion in value for clients in increased wages, savings, and assets. It helped more than 49,000 people with workforce development services, collectively increasing their wages by more than $370 million. Pretty remarkable numbers. Thrive built a successful family financial strategy model that will produce generational change and economic growth for years to come. Now in its 11th year, Thrive will continue to build on its success, broaden its network, and identify more opportunities to prepare people for high-wage and high-growth careers. Anna Babin became the president and CEO of the United Way of Greater Houston in 2005. She spearheaded United Way's Vision 2012 plan, which has been recently updated to a comprehensive strategic plan known as Vision 2020. The plan offers a bold direction to meet the 21st century. Thrive was born from this plan. The success of Thrive in its first decade is United Way's foundation and anchor as it moves into its second century. Today, we honor the United Way of Greater Houston with an UpSkill Houston Award for Excellence in Leadership for building a strong and diverse network of partners working together to create and ensure opportunity for all. Come on up, Anna. We now turn from a well-established program to a relatively new one. Trio Electric, a great partners of ours at Gilbane Building Company, and one of Houston's fastest growing commercial electrical firms, recognized a growing need for skilled electrician. Their president and CEO, Bo Pollock, designed a pre-apprenticeship program in partnership with Spring Branch Independent School District and Houston Community College to equip students interested in becoming electricians with valuable on-the-job training. The program offers the opportunity for students entering their junior year of high school the opportunity to learn and get on-the-job training through a paid internship so that by the time they graduate high school, they will graduate with a Helper Certificate Level 1 from HCC. The program's first cohort just graduated high school, many moving on to jobs at TRIO, and some even continuing with a scholarship at HCC. The second cohort is just starting its summer internship cycle. By September, when the third cohort signs on, the program will have 280 young people in their careers or considering electrical careers across Houston, Austin, and Dallas. In recognition of building this innovative and clear pathway from high school to career, we are honored to present TRIO Electric with an UpSkill Houston Award for Excellence in Leadership. We invite, and I may get this wrong, so I apologize, Edgar Angelou, a master electrician with Rio, to come up. I should note, this year's awards were made by students in Houston Community College's Welding and Material Science program. Thank you again to HCC. As we wrap up this portion of today's event, please note our 3 breakout sessions taking place in the Greenway Ballroom A and B on this floor and downstairs in the Constellation Ballroom. In these sessions, Renee Solis, Chief Program Officer with Baker Ripley, who you saw in our video, will describe how the organization created effective employer-community partnerships through its Aspire program. Our team from the Boston Consulting Group will present an interactive session to explore how UpSkill Houston can continue its momentum. And our team from Techonomy Partners will dive more deeply into the regional labor market data. Before we begin our breakout session, though, I'd like to welcome Peter Beard again, Senior Vice President of Workforce Development for Greater Houston Partnership, back to the stage to deliver our closing remarks. Thank you, Peter. Get my mess out of your way.
So before I get started, I want to say thank you to Dan, because you need an exceptional volunteer leader like Dan to take this on. And so thanks, Dan. And Beth, thank you, because as you described, we're trying to figure out our next business model, and so we're excited that we can learn in parallel with you, and really appreciated your inspired remarks, so thank you. As Dan mentioned, please consult the programs to look for the breakout session that is important to you. And as we've heard today, we are really trying to figure out what do we need to do to make a difference in Houston to ensure people have great jobs, our businesses are productive and competitive, and our region has a strong regional economy, and it is anchored in our most important asset, the residents of this region, and we need to invest in our individuals. So we're thinking about how do we do that, and these sessions are really intended to give us examples or also to get feedback so we can think about what UpSkill's next era is. And we need to shape that regional economy so that we continue to be, one of the great global cities. On your tables, I see not many people have picked up their little stress relief toys. So make sure you don't leave the ballroom without them, but it's in partnership with Red and Black, and we're going to be adding something to our My Life As series, which will be coming, but there are a series of animated videos to talk about some of the essential foundational skills that Beth talked about. So you'll see more of that coming, but thank you, Red and Black. But I just wanted to make sure you didn't lose these. And so 2 final things. One is, before we adjourn, make sure you save the date for the partnership's inaugural State of Education event, because that's a continuation of this conversation to ensure that we continue to build a workforce. And for those of you that know, the partnership has its gala, which is the soiree, that's coming up on August 24th, and then the State of the Houston region is coming up in September. And then one final event that's probably not on here, it hasn't been scheduled yet, but once this work has been done with BCG and Techonomy and with you all, you can expect that we will gather again to talk about the next era and what we will be focused on and try to engage the broader community. So look for that coming probably in mid to late October. But we're excited. I want to thank you for being here today. Have a great day. Enjoy the breakout sessions.